My name is Clara Mae Thompson. I'm 32, and my life imploded with a single text message from my bank. A $750,000 line of credit had been opened in my name, money I had never touched. But my signature was on the papers. The pen was handed to me by my own father. My brother smiled as I signed, and my boyfriend cheered me on. They didn't just set me up, they built the gilded cage and then locked me inside it. Before I share the rest of my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like and subscribe button, especially if you've ever been the one who gives too much for family. Trust me, you'll want to hear what happened next. I'm Clara Mae Thompson, and my life feels like a ledger. Every entry a debt I owe to someone else. By day, I'm a compliance officer at a sleek financial firm in Chicago's Loop, where the skyline glitters like a promise of freedom. By night, I'm the dependable one, in my family, the one who picks up the pieces when they fall apart. Oak Park, where my parents live, is only a short train ride from my downtown apartment, but it might as well be another world. Their house smells of potpourri and unspoken expectations, the kind that cling to you like damp wool. I got the promotion today, Senior Compliance Director. The words still feel foreign, like they belong to someone else. My boss, Karen, clapped me on the shoulder and said, "You're a machine, Clara. This firm's lucky to have you." I smiled, nodded, and let the warmth of it settle in my chest for exactly 10 minutes before my phone buzzed. A text from my brother, Leo. "Hey sis, need a quick $500 for a thing. You know I'm good for it." I stared at the screen, the glow of my victory fading. Leo's things are always ventures that crash and burn, leaving me to cover the wreckage. I didn't reply. I never do right away. It's my small rebellion, delaying the inevitable. By the time I got home, Mom had called twice. Her voicemails are always the same, soft, syrupy, with a barb tucked inside. "Clara, honey, we're worried about you. Working too hard. Come to dinner Sunday, all right? Your father has something to tell you." I played the message on speaker, pouring myself a glass of cheap Merlot. The wine tasted like regret. I knew what something meant. Another crisis, another favor. Another piece of me carved out for the family. Sunday came too fast. I was still riding the high of my promotion, imagining a life where I could say no, where I could be more than their safety net. But then Dad's text arrived, crisp and commanding. "Big family dinner Sunday. Important news. Need you there." My stomach twisted. The words were polite, but they weren't a request. I tossed my phone onto the couch and sank into the cushions. The city's hum outside my window, a faint reminder of a world I rarely touched. The dinner was at their house, a sprawling Victorian that felt more like a museum than a home. Mom fussed over the table settings, her pearls clicking softly as she moved. Dad sat at the head, his glasses perched low, exuding the quiet authority of a man who always got his way. Leo was late, as usual, sauntering in with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. My boyfriend Mark was already there, charming Mom with stories about his latest real estate deal. I watched them all, my family, performing their roles in a play I'd seen 1,000 times. I wanted to scream, to shatter the crystal glasses and demand they see me, really see me. Instead, I smiled and passed the mashed potatoes. The important news didn't come until dessert. Dad cleared his throat and the room stilled. "Clara, we need your help with something." His voice was warm, but it carried an edge, like a blade wrapped in velvet. I braced myself, knowing whatever came next would cost me more than money. The dining room felt smaller as Dad slid a stack of papers across the table. The chandelier cast jagged shadows, and I could feel everyone's eyes on me. Mom's hopeful, Leo's calculating, Mark's too eager. "It's for Leo's new business," Dad said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Thompson Sustainable Technologies, a real game changer. But we need an officer with clean credit to incorporate. Just a formality, sweetie. Your name's just a placeholder." Leo leaned forward, his charm dialed up to 11. "Clara, this is it, the big one. Sustainable tech's the future, and I've got investors lined up. We just need to get the ball rolling." His words were smooth, practiced, but I caught the flicker of desperation in his eyes. I'd seen it before. Every time he swore he'd pay me back. I looked at the documents, crisp and official, the kind I'd review at work without blinking. But these felt different, heavy, like they could anchor me to something I couldn't escape. "What exactly am I signing?" I asked, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. It's nothing, really, Mom said, her hand brushing mine. Just a little paperwork to help your brother. You're so good at this stuff, Clara. Her smile was a trap, and I was already half caught. Mark, who'd been silent, piped up. It's a great opportunity, Clara. Leo's really turned a corner this time. His encouragement felt rehearsed, and for a moment I wondered why he cared so much. But I was tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of being the one who always said no. The room closed in, their voices a chorus of expectation. I signed. The pen scratched against the paper, and I told myself it was fine. Just a formality. Just this once. As I stood to leave, Mom pressed something cold into my hand. This was your grandmother's, she said, her voice thick with emotion. She wanted the strongest woman in the family to have it. It was a silver locket, small and ornate, its weight heavier than it should have been. I clutched it, forcing a smile, but the gesture felt like a performance. In the car, I opened it, expecting a photo, but it was empty. The locket felt like a lie, just like the dinner, just like my signature. Back in my apartment, I poured another glass of wine and stared at the city lights. Relief flickered, faint and false. Maybe they were right. Maybe this was the last time. But the locket sat on my counter, glinting in the dark, and my gut churned with a warning I couldn't name. I went to bed, but sleep didn't come. The documents, the smiles, the locket, they all felt like pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to solve. Weeks passed, and I buried myself in work, trying to outrun the unease that followed me like a shadow. The promotion kept me busy, but it couldn't drown out the nagging feeling that I'd made a mistake. Then, one morning, my phone pinged with a bank alert. A line of credit had been opened in my name, $750,000, tied to Thompson Sustainable Technologies, LLC. My heart stopped. I called the bank, my hands shaking as I explained I hadn't authorized it. The rep was polite but firm. My signature was on the incorporation papers. I was the officer of record. I drove to Leo's apartment, a cramped walk-up in Wicker Park that smelled of stale beer and ambition. He was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone, and barely looked up when I stormed in. What the hell, Leo? I shoved the bank alert in his face. What is this? He rolled his eyes. Chill, Clara. It's just startup stuff. You signed the papers, remember? It's all above board. His nonchalance was a slap, and I wanted to shake him until he admitted the truth. But he just shrugged, like I was the one overreacting. Desperate, I went to Mark. He was at his place, a sleek condo he could barely afford. I showed him the alert, expecting shock, anger, support. Instead, his face went pale, and he looked away. Clara, I didn't want you to find out like this, he said, his voice low. My stomach dropped. Find out what? He confessed, the words spilling out like poison. He'd known all along. Leo's business was a front, a shell to siphon money from investors. Mark was in on it, promised a cut for keeping me in line. It was supposed to be quick, he said, as if that made it better. We were all going to get paid. They'd been using my identity for months, forging my name on loans, contracts, everything. I stood there, frozen, as the man I loved dismantled my world. I threw him out, my voice raw with rage. Get out. Now. He tried to apologize, but I slammed the door, the sound echoing in the empty apartment. I sank to the floor, the bank alert still glowing on my phone. Leo's betrayal was bad enough, but Mark's cut deeper. I'd trusted him, loved him, and he'd sold me out. My family wasn't my rock, they were my ruin, stripping me bare until there was nothing left. I was alone. Completely, utterly alone. The city outside my window felt like a stranger. Its lights cold and indifferent. I clutched the locket, its edges biting into my palm, and let the tears come. I wasn't just a victim of their scheme. I was implicated, tangled in a crime I didn't even understand. The weight of it crushed me, and for the first time I didn't know how to fight back. The certified letter came on a Tuesday, its weight heavy in my hands before I even opened it. The words inside were clinical, unyielding. Investigation for wire fraud and money laundering. Thompson Sustainable Technologies, LLC, Clara May Thompson, Officer of Record. My office, usually a sanctuary of order, felt like a trap. I read the letter 3 times, each word a nail in the coffin of the life I'd built. By noon, my boss called me into her office. Clara, we have to protect the firm, Karen said, her voice clipped. You're on unpaid leave, effective immediately. No discussion, no chance to explain. I was escorted out, my badge confiscated, my colleagues' eyes averted. I called Dad from the parking lot, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. Clara, "We don't know what you've done," he said, his voice like ice, "but you will not drag this family's name through the mud. You're on your own." The line went dead. Mom didn't answer. Leo's number was disconnected. I sat in my car, the Chicago skyline mocking me through the windshield, and realized they'd cut me loose. Later that night, I saw my face on the local news. Promising tech company embroiled in scandal, Clara Thompson, sole officer. My name, my photo, my ruin. I couldn't afford my apartment anymore. The lease was up, and my savings were drained from Leo's loans and the legal fees already piling up. I packed a single suitcase, work clothes, a few books, the locket, and moved to a weekly rate apartment on the far north side. The place reeked of mildew, the fluorescent light buzzing like a dying insect. My old life, with its lake views and polished floors, was gone. I was a ghost, haunting a city that no longer knew me. At night, I lay on the sagging mattress, staring at the cracked ceiling, wondering how I'd fallen so far. The locket sat on the nightstand, its silver glint, a faint reminder of who I used to be. The new building was a maze of dim hallways and peeling paint, but it was all I had. I kept to myself, avoiding the other tenants until I met Mr. Davies. He was in his late 60s, a grizzled ex-journalist who lived 2 doors down, his apartment stacked with yellowed paperbacks and empty whiskey bottles. One morning, I dropped my keys in the hall, and he picked them up, his eyes sharp despite the red rims. "You look like someone who's been screwed over good," he said, not unkindly. I flinched, but his bluntness was oddly comforting, like he saw the truth I was too ashamed to admit. That night I sat cross-legged on the floor, sorting through my suitcase. The locket slipped from my hands and hit the ground, popping open. I'd thought it was empty, but a closer look revealed a tiny seam, barely visible. My heart raced as I grabbed a pin and pried it open. Inside was a micro SD card, small as a fingernail. I stared at it, my mind spinning. Mr. Davies had an old laptop and a card reader. I knocked on his door at midnight, too wired to care about the hour. He didn't ask questions, just handed me the reader and poured himself a drink. The card held encrypted files. I'm no hacker, but my compliance training gave me enough to crack the basic password protection. What I found stole my breath. Investor agreements with Leo's signature, not mine. Audio recordings of Dad and Leo plotting to pin the fraud on me, their voices cold and casual. Bank transfers to offshore accounts. And then the last file, a short audio clip from my grandmother, her voice frail but fierce. "I'm sorry, my dear girl. They are not who you think they are. Use this when you need it. Be strong." I played it again, tears streaming down my face. She'd known, she'd tried to protect me even from the grave. The grief hit like a tidal wave, dragging me under. My family wasn't just flawed, they were monsters, and I'd been their pawn. But as the tears dried, something else took root, a spark of purpose. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about justice. I looked at Mr. Davies, who'd been watching me silently. "You got a plan, kid?" he asked. I nodded, the SD card burning in my palm. For the first time in weeks, I felt alive. Mr. Davies became my unlikely ally, his cynicism tempered by a knack for digging up dirt. "You don't go to the cops yet," he warned. "Your family'll spin you as the crazy one, and those files could be dismissed as fakes. You need a case they can't ignore." I listened, soaking up his advice like a lifeline. By day, I used my compliance skills to trace the money flow, mapping the web of accounts Leo and Dad had hidden. By night, I became someone else, a shadow, careful and calculated. I created a burner email and contacted the defrauded investors, posing as a concerned whistleblower. I didn't reveal much, just enough to plant doubts about who was really in charge. Using a voice modulator, I left an anonymous tip with a financial reporter, a former colleague of Mr. Davies who was hungry for a scoop. Every move was a step toward dismantling the lie that had ruined me. But I needed to rattle them, to make them slip. So I sent a single text from a new number. A photo of the locket, open and empty, no words, just the image. I imagined Leo's panic, Dad's rage, Mom's guilt. Good. Let them squirm. The work was slow, meticulous, but it gave me purpose. I started eating again, sleeping more than a few hours. Mr. Davies would sit with me sipping whiskey and tossing out ideas. "You're building a trap," he said one night, a rare grin cracking his face. "And they're too arrogant to see it." I smiled back, the first real smile in months. The locket sat on my desk, no longer a weight but a weapon. I was done being their victim. I was writing my own story now, and it wasn't going to end with me in chains. The reporter's story hit like a grenade, fragments of truth scattering across Chicago's financial circles. Thompson Sustainable Technologies, a house of cards, screamed the headline, and the investors were circling, demanding answers. I knew it was time. I'd spent weeks building my case, every document, recording, and bank transfer a brick in the wall I was about to bring down. I rented a sterile conference room at a downtown law firm, hired a white-collar crime lawyer named Susan, who had a reputation for chewing up fraudsters and spitting them out. Then I sent the text. Family meeting, tomorrow, 2 p.m., address attached, come alone. I didn't sign it, they'd know it was me. They arrived one by one, their faces a mix of annoyance and unease. Dad, his jaw tight, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Leo, fidgeting, his charm replaced by a nervous twitch. Mark, slouched and avoiding my eyes, probably hoping for a way out. Mom was last, her pearls clutched like a lifeline, her face pale. I stood at the head of the table, Susan at my side, a laptop open in front of me. The room smelled of coffee and fear, and for the first time I wasn't the one trembling. Thanks for coming, I said, my voice steady, almost soft. I thought we should clear the air. Leo snorted, but Dad silenced him with a look. I didn't waste time. I clicked play, and the first recording filled the room, Dad's voice, cold and precise, outlining how they'd pinned the fraud on me. Clara's perfect, he'd said. No one'll suspect her, and she'll take the fall clean. The color drained from his face as he listened to himself. Leo's hands gripped the table, knuckles white. Mark stared at the floor, his betrayal laid bare. I didn't stop there. I projected the forged documents next to the real ones, Leo's signature glaring where mine had been faked. Bank transfers to offshore accounts, timestamps matching their business meetings. Every piece of evidence was a blade, and I wielded them with the precision I'd honed in compliance. I didn't shout, didn't cry. I let the truth do the cutting. Dad recovered first, his voice a low growl. This is nonsense, Clara, fabricated. You're unhinged and no one will believe you. Leo chimed in, his words tripping over each other. Yeah, you're just mad we didn't cut you in. This is desperate. I let them rant, their denials piling up like kindling. Then I looked at Mom. She hadn't said a word, her eyes fixed on the locket, which I'd placed on the table, open and empty. Mom, I said quietly. Anything you want to add? Her hands shook, and for a moment I thought she'd stay silent. Then she broke. It was me, she whispered, her voice cracking. The room froze. I put the card in the locket. I found out what they were doing months ago. I was too scared to stop them, but I couldn't let you take the fall. Tears streamed down her face, but I felt nothing. Not pity, not relief. She'd known, and instead of warning me, she'd played her part, hoping I'd find her coward's gift. Dad's face twisted with rage. Eleanor, shut up! But it was too late. Susan leaned forward, her voice calm but lethal. Mrs. Thompson, you'll want to cooperate with the authorities. It'll go better for you. Mark tried to bolt, muttering apologies, but Susan's paralegal was already at the door, and the faint wail of sirens grew closer. I'd tipped off the feds through Susan, and they were waiting. The click of handcuffs was quiet, almost delicate, as they led Leo and Dad away. Mark followed, head bowed, a plea deal already forming in his mind. Mom sat, sobbing, but I didn't look at her. The Thompson family, with its polished facade, was ash. I walked out into the Chicago afternoon, the wind sharp against my face. The locket was in my pocket, lighter now like it had shed its secrets. I'd won, but the victory was hollow. My family was gone, not just in handcuffs, but in every way that mattered. I was free, but I was alone, and the weight of that truth settled deep in my bones. The legal battle was a marathon, not a sprint. Leo and Dad faced years in prison, wire fraud, money laundering, the works. Mark took a plea, testifying against them for a lighter sentence. Mom's cooperation kept her out of jail, but our last conversation was a ghost of words. Her apologies drowned by the chasm between us. I was exonerated, the financial settlements enough to cover my legal fees and leave me with a modest nest egg. But the money didn't fix the hole in my chest, the one carved out by betrayal and loss. I couldn't go back to my old life. The corporate world with its glass towers and empty promises had lost its shine. I spent weeks in my North Side apartment, the buzz of the fluorescent light my only company. Mr. Davies would knock sometimes, bringing coffee or a dog-eared paperback. You're not done yet, kid, he'd say, his gruffness a kind of anchor. He was right, I wasn't done. I had one fight left in me, not for revenge, but for something bigger. I used the settlement to start a nonprofit. I called it the Second Ledger, a name that felt like a promise to myself. Its mission was simple but fierce: to help people, mostly women, who'd been financially exploited by their own families. The ones who'd been drained dry, like I had, their trust turned into a weapon. I rented a small office in Uptown, its windows catching the morning sun, and hired a skeleton crew, a lawyer, a counselor, and a bookkeeper who believed in the work as much as I did. We offered legal aid, financial planning, a lifeline for those who'd been left with nothing. The work was hard, the cases gut-wrenching. A mother whose son had stolen her retirement savings, a sister whose brother had forged her name on a predatory loan. Each story was a mirror reflecting my own pain, but also my strength. I wasn't just helping them, I was healing myself, one case at a time. The locket stayed in my desk drawer, not a talisman anymore, but a reminder of how far I'd come. A year later, I sat in my office, the walls lined with thank you notes from clients. A young woman named Mia was across from me, her hands twisted in her lap, her story spilling out in halting bursts. Her father had used her identity to fund his gambling debts, leaving her with nothing but shame. I listened, my heart aching but steady. "You're not alone," I told her, sliding a card across the desk with our resources. "We'll get you through this." She nodded, tears brimming, and for a moment, I saw myself in her, the Clara who'd been broken, betrayed, but not destroyed. As Mia left, I leaned back in my chair, the sun streaming through the window. The city hummed outside, alive and indifferent, but I wasn't a ghost anymore. I was Clara. Not the dependable one, not the victim, just me. The Second Ledger wasn't just a nonprofit, it was my reckoning, my way of balancing the books for those who'd been wronged. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid of it. The light felt warm on my face, like a new dawn, and I let myself believe in it. Financial abuse by family is a silent, isolating trauma, and Clara's story gives it a voice. Her creation of the Second Ledger proves that the most powerful response to being victimized is to become a lifeline for others. If you see yourself in Clara's struggle, the pressure, the guilt, the betrayal, know that you are not alone and help is out there. Share this story to raise awareness. Let us know in the comments if you believe her mother deserved forgiveness. And remember to subscribe for more content that matters.